I am driving down Highway 44 here in Missouri, heading to Six Flags St. Louis. I live about a half hour away, about 10 minutes out right now, as you can hear the cars going by. It's 6:30 at night. Park stays open till 9. I'm just going to take a quick little trip. I usually go with my daughter. We do the family rides, things like that. This time it's just me, and I am going to hit some of the roller coasters and other attractions that I rarely do or have never done. And I'm going to record a few clips so you can join me on this trip to my local regional park, which is not the best park in the world, but it still has some fun rides. So let's check it out. Let's go to Six Flags St. Louis. You're listening to the Tomorrow Society Podcast. All right, I have pulled into the parking lot. I am now getting out of the car here. At Six Flags, the parking lot is not very crowded right now. And I definitely did not spring for the preferred parking, which is a ripoff for an extra $10, especially at regional parks. And basically, I have the season pass, which is a great deal. If you are planning on going to like a regional park like this, look for the good deals because it's often cheaper than going once and paying the $25 for parking, which is exactly what I did. Heading towards the entrance now. There are a lot of empty spaces in the preferred parking section because nobody wants to do that. People are smart. I'm going to go in and do the metal detectors and the whole rigmarole to get inside. And once I get in, I'm heading for the best coaster that I've ridden in the park, American Thunder. And then I'm going to hit some of the ones I've never ridden before, like the Boomerang, and then some old favorites like the Ninja, but I will check in with you later to see how it's going. So I ended up doing a detour. I decided that I saw that the Justice League Battle for Metropolis attraction was actually open, which is often closed, and they had a single rider line. It is the only indoor attraction in the park. And it's not super hot out, but it's warm enough. So I rode it twice. It would be easily the best in the park. An amazing attraction if the effects all weren't broken. I've ridden it before, and there was fire, and there was basically every physical effect that moved broke. And even the screen broke at one point. Still a lot of fun, but not on the level of what it used to be. It's pretty sad on Six Flags part. I mean, I'm glad I got to ride it, that it was open. It still was pretty bad, not good. Now I'm going to head over and do what I said earlier. I'm going to ride the Ninja, which I have not ridden in 20 years. The black belt of roller coasters. I did miss the Mardi Gras parade, which started at 7 o'clock. But, you know, that wasn't really the goal. It's kind of a bit of a low run thing. I like that they do it. It's kind of fun. Not something that really is I'm gonna make a stop for. So all right, I'm gonna go check out the Ninja, and if I survive that, I think we're doing Batman. This is where I can see if I can still ride coasters like this. I'll be back later. All right, well, I survived Batman. That was a roller coaster that I have really clear memories of being like 19 and eating a bunch of fries and then riding it and getting really sick in the exit ramp. So I've ridden it since, but it's been years, and that one really hurt. It's just one of those, like, it's not super high in terms of hills, and I've ridden inverted coasters before, but it just is a really intense ride. I forgot how it is with those corkscrews. I got off and I was like, okay, I need a break. I'm 42 years old, and I cannot take that kind of motion and intensity too many times in a row. So that was a lot to take. I don't think I'll be doing Batman anytime soon. It's an older roller coaster, but just the way that it kind of flips you from the center of your core with those corkscrews, and it's so like wrapped around itself so you don't have time to relax. That is too much to take. Before that, I did the Ninja, which I enjoyed a lot. You got to watch it though. It's one of those coasters. There's a lot very similar. Like I believe there's one called Viper, and the ones that basically give you a couple corkscrews, and you have to hold, or else your head is just gonna bang against the shoulder restraints, which I did avoid doing. That was fun. Hate to say that's more my speed since it was still pretty crazy, but it definitely felt a little easier. I also discovered that, not to my surprise, that Six Flags bathrooms are disgusting. What I enjoyed about this one is there was a sign outside the door that said that they were proud to have the cleanest bathrooms in all theme parks, which I found very entertaining, given that this was old and disgusting. So if you're gonna put a sign up like that, you gotta do a little bit better, Six Flags. And the other thing is, I did manage to get a little water cup from the stand, which you could do for free. And then as I was entering Batman, I saw that there was a little water dispenser. This is great, this is so smart. They put this dispenser over there so that anyone who wants to get a drink before they walk through the ridiculously long queue that was empty but took 10 minutes. And of course I filled up and then was told by an employee very meanly that I was using the employee water dispenser. And even after I apologized, he kind of gave me a really dirty look like dumb old man, which I probably deserved. So I was excited to talk about how it was smart to put the water there, and then felt pretty silly. Now I have recovered. I've sat down and taken a bit of a break after my Batman experience. This may discourage me from doing Mr. Freeze backwards after doing that, as Mr. Freeze frontwards has hurt me before. I think I'm gonna go over and do the boss, which, speaking of pain, I'm gonna get ready for that one. You know, it's about 8:15 at night. The park closes at 9. So I'm thinking that getting to do a few more coasters. I definitely want to hit the Screaming Eagle, which is the old 1970s coaster. That is still a lot of fun. Wooden coaster. And then we'll probably do a few on the way out. Luckily, this park has been dead the whole time, which is awesome, because while it still seems to take longer than it should because of the loading and unloading is very slow, but a lot of it's for safety, which I appreciate. I have found that, you know, a weeknight at 7 or 8 p.m. in July, especially one that's not super hot. I cannot imagine being in this park when it was 95 degrees and doing these coasters. Doing it this way, I think, is the right way to go. If you just want to cram in a bunch of rides, I mean, they sell like a flash pass. Please do not buy those unless you're on the busiest day of the year, which in this park, I'm not even sure they'd be worth it then. This park can't even fill the roller coasters, which I appreciate. I love that because I'm able to do a lot, not have to rush in a few hours' time. So heading over to, speaking of long queues, I'm heading over to the boss, which has possibly the longest queue in the park. But again, I'm really excited that there's not a huge wait, and I'll check in a little later. Okay, well, I just finished the boss and I was reminded, I don't know if I could recreate the experience, but basically, if I try to talk and all you hear is, if you want to just get punched a bunch or beat up, this is the ride to do it. It's a cool coaster. It looks cool. It goes through the terrain and the woods, which I love. But I forgot, my goodness, that hurts. It's like, I don't know, you know, I mean, my wallet fell in my pocket. Luckily, it stayed on the seat. I mean, seriously, I don't know what Six Flags can do to help this coaster. It's fun, in quotes, but it hurts. I will tell you. Compare this to like the Voyage or anything at Holiday World, and I know there's plenty of other examples of wooden coasters of this length and hills that are really amazing. This one freaking hurts. And I say this, I've been recording this as I'm walking through the longest queue in the world. It makes sense because what I like about the ride is it's all over the place. It's huge. It's long. It has some big hills. Like even now, I'm walking through the queue and I'm walking basically through. The ride is around me, which is great. However, the problem being is that you can only do so much when you're being hurt that badly. And it's just one of those rides that just beats you up. And I know it's not, I mean, you can say something like, I'm going to ride the Screaming Eagle in a little while, which is an old wooden coaster that you kind of expect that. It hurts your back and stuff. But when you add the fact that the boss is going so much faster and basically is just beating you up, it hurts much worse. Well, we'll see, because that's what I'm going to do in a little bit here. Another thing that I feel when I've been doing all this, which I haven't done as much recently, like I mentioned in the front, is that You know, I hate to have the idea that, oh, I'm too old for this, or oh, I'm getting old, or whatever, and all that. But my goodness, there is a point where it's pretty painful to ride some of these coasters, and they're affecting me a lot more than I remembered. It's not a super hot day, so it should be something where I'm able to kind of handle them, and I am having a hard time with some of these right now. I'm pretty much ready to just go sit down and ride the railroad. You know, with all the people that don't ride coasters. And I love the railroad, so there's nothing against that. But man, this is hurting. I think I'm going to do the Screaming Eagle in a little bit. Maybe jump on the log flume and get a little cooler. And then we'll be basically done. Yeah, I remember the bus being painful, but it's been maybe 3 or 4 years since I've ridden it, and it has only gotten more so that way. While it's fun, you know, there are kids behind me that said it was the greatest ride in all of Six Flags that he's ever ridden, which that's cool. You know, it's up there, it's not bad. But there is only so much of that anyone could take, I think. But, you know, I'm glad that I did it. It's been a while. It's not what I'm going to do with my daughter, and I would never push her to go on anything, but especially not a ride that hurts that bad. So I am now heading up towards the other end of the park where Screaming Eagle is located. I may sit down and get another drink of water for a bit and prepare, because that one also hurts. I'm thinking I may have a sore back tomorrow. Having a good time and enjoying the fact that it's so dead here. Okay, well, I take back everything I just said about the boss being the most painful. Screaming Eagle freaking hurts. Like that ride, wow. I mean, it was 1976 and it goes up to 62 miles an hour. And you can feel it, you know, and after doing all these other coasters, I really felt that one. And it really does a number on you. You just sit there and get pummeled, and it's fun. It's a classic out and back coaster that I think is worth riding because it's one of the more unique things that we have here. At one point, it was, when it was open, the fastest roller coaster in the country. It is no longer that for sure, but it still hurts, and I enjoyed it a lot. It was a lot of fun, but kind of the cumulative effect of doing all these coasters in a short period of time. Actually, sometimes maybe it helps to have a bit of a wait in line because your body gets a chance to recover a bit. And I have not had that much of a chance to recover, but I still had a great time on it. It's just one of those where you think, could they make it less painful? Probably with new cars, but I don't know if they want to invest the money without somehow, you know, dramatically adjusting the ride. And I don't expect too much from Six Flags here because this is not one of the more popular Six Flags parks. As you can see, judging by this crowd, I mean, who knows? I think they're probably doing fine, but judging by what they've been putting in as new attractions the last few times, I tend to think that maybe that they're not like killing it right now. So, you know, there's still plenty to do here that is enjoyable. It's more, you know, I've gotten used to doing like Disney coasters like Big Thunder Mountain or Space Mountain or even, you know, Rock and Roller Coaster, and I'm like, oh, I'm pretty tough. And then I read these, I'm like, oh yeah, I haven't done these in a while. This is what it's like when you haven't done it and your body's gotten older and you go, oh, the pain. Yes, the pain. And one other thing I will say, the layout of this park is very strange. To get to the Screaming Eagle, you basically have to roundabout, like go bypass the Bugs Bunny Kids area, and there's really no good way to get there without doing a lot of walking. And again, come to appreciate certain parks that are just laid out so well, whether they're, you know, Islands Adventure or Disneyland, obviously being the model, where you go through this and you find yourself like, I didn't do that many rides tonight, and I felt like I just walked so much. And so that is a bit of a downside to this also, is just all the walking. And I think we've got about 15 minutes left. I may try to sneak in one more ride on Justice League, but I am done with coasters because I could feel on Screaming Eagle, there was this point where I went, ooh, I haven't felt that feeling in my stomach for a while. But luckily everything turned out okay, so there were no disasters on that front. But it was still fun to do. I haven't done it in a long time. So now I'm just kind of finishing up, maybe check out one more ride before exiting the park. And now I just have to figure out, with this kind of confusing layout, the actual best way to get there, and I think it's heading this way. So I want to head to the sort of DC area where you have Mr. Freeze right near where Justice League is. So I think I'm going to check that out, and then I am going to take off because the park is going to close, but I'll check in one more time before I exit. All right, well, I rode Justice League one more time. One thing I noticed with the physical sets is they did a little bit of extra strobe lights, it looks like, which I have to remember. Maybe they always have those and they're not as noticeable when the physical effects are working. But when you go to like a part where a bunch of barrels are supposed to seem like they're going to fall on you and there's just a bunch of strobe lights. And also the coolest thing in there is the Joker animatronic, which does talk, but it's supposed to shoot like laughing gas at you and then fire comes. And none of that actually happens. The Joker just talks and we hear a lot of noise. Still a fun ride regardless. But it definitely is not the same when you are not seeing the full impact. You know, I love the single rider line, I love the air conditioning, and it's a fun interactive attraction, but it needs some, over the off season, they need to seriously do some fixing on it. And I know that a lot of times it is down during the day, so I think that's part of it. But overall, this was a fun couple hours. I will say that the lack of pretty much any lines, most coasters, Screaming Eagle had about 5 people on it when I rode it. These last couple hours, especially if you have a season pass, are a great way to see a ton of things. That was awesome. So I had a great time. I feel a little woozy after that last roller coaster. All things considered, it was cool. Not sure I'm ready to tackle somewhere like Cedar Point or Magic Mountain with really crazy coasters, but I did enjoy getting a chance to do just a short drive and check out a lot of stuff here that I hadn't done in a long time. So I think that is it. I am heading for the exit now, and I'm going to step out and head towards the car. And I hope you enjoyed this, and I'm going to turn it over to Dan in the future.
Well, welcome back. I hope you enjoyed hearing my feedback from that trip to Six Flags St. Louis in late July. And as I listen back to those recordings, 2 things really stand out to me. One of them is my slow realization as the evening goes on that maybe I'm getting a little too old for some of the more intense roller coasters. Now, part of it might be the fact that there were no lines at all. So, like I mentioned on the recording, I'm just going coaster, 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 coaster. I don't have that time to recover. That is something I've even noticed when the few times I've been solo at Disney, is if you're not careful, you can really wear yourself out because you just decide you don't have anything like, oh, everyone's got to stop for the bathroom or the kids need a break. You just go, and there's a danger in just going and running yourself right into the ground. The other thing that I notice is some of the frustration, especially with the effects on the Justice League, which was almost comically not working correctly, especially with the Joker scene where he's supposed to move forward and then there's fire and then the gas comes and everything seems off. It's one of those things where I think they probably should have just had it closed, though I did really enjoy getting a chance to ride it 3 times thanks to the single rider line. So I have mixed feelings there because if it had just been closed, I would have thought, oh, I really wanted to ride that. This is a good opportunity. So I think I probably enjoyed riding it more than if it had been closed, but it's a close call on that front. So another thing I wanted to mention is in early August on a Sunday, I went with my daughter to Six Flags like we do every year, and it was a fairly cool Sunday where the temperatures were in the high 60s, low 70s, which is pretty abnormal for St. Louis. And while we had a fun trip, I really noticed something that I had sort of seen when I was there a few weeks earlier, which was so many of the rides were closed. Not just closed like, oh, it's just a slow day or one of those things. They're just not open at all. Shazam, the Scrambler, which my daughter loves, didn't even have the vehicles on it. We noticed that Colossus, she also likes the giant Ferris wheel, was closed. Apparently, they're doing something to fix the loading process, but it's been closed basically all summer. The Highland Fling is gone for this year. Excalibur seems to be closed for the summer. When we went, the railroad also wasn't operating, which is something she enjoys because she's not really into the big roller coasters very much. All of those attractions were closed when we were there. And that was only half of it because the park opened at 10:30 in the morning. We were there around that time. And they weren't even ready to open most of the attractions. So everybody comes in the park, heads to the attractions they want to go to. We were going, because Justice League was closed on that day, we were going to the log flume and got there and just got to wait with others while we watched the staff members test it. It was the same situation nearby at everything. We're near the antique cars, American Thunder, the roller coaster. We're all being tested at least 10-15 minutes after the opening time. And it doesn't sound that bad, but if you think about it in terms of Disney World, and it's kind of a silly comparison, but that's where my mind goes. If Disney World opened and you got there early and you were ready to go and you showed up and every attraction was closed and was just being tested, it would be frustrating. And I could tell people getting frustrated here, where my impression is originally there was a forecast of rain for that morning, like the whole day basically, and it ended up raining that afternoon. But I think that Six Flags staffed accordingly, assuming that they wouldn't even have to open the park, or if they did, it would be so dead, and didn't prepare their outdoor attractions, which are most of the rides, from being ready. So I cut them a little slack, but the way they handle it, I mean, this isn't a case where the park was opening at 9 a.m. or 9:30 even. It was 10:30 in the morning. You need to be able to get your attractions ready. A lot of the roller coasters I saw, like Pandemonium, Mr. Freeze, and others, didn't open till like an hour after the park. They also never opened the carousel, which is another thing my daughter likes. It was just kind of a mess. We also went to the Bugs Bunny Kids area where we saw they had two attractions. One was a little flying saucer and one was the swings, and they had one person operating both. So basically they even had a sign up that I took a picture of, which indicated we only have one operator for this attraction, so that person is going to go back and forth. It would just be a rotation. Now, there weren't a lot of people there. That was the one benefit of this type of day. My daughter loves the log flume. We rode it 4 times. We rode it twice in a row without getting off. We did the antique cars multiple times. So the things we did end up doing, we did several times because there were no people in the park. And so you can understand if Six Flags does not want to push full on, but it still felt like bad show in a lot of cases. Most of the food stands weren't open. The ones that were kind of disgusting. I got a weird impression going through this park that I'm starting to wonder if it will be open in a year or two. And I know they have been adding a new attraction every year. They did add Justice League, I believe, 3 years ago, and they've kept on. They added some flat rides like Fireball and Spinsanity, and this year they were adding a new water ride at their water park, Hurricane Harbor, which has already had problems because someone got injured on the opening day, and so they closed it for a while, and I believe now it is reopened. But you really get a sense. I mean, I've been going with my daughter since she went into kindergarten, and we've gone each summer. This is the 4th time we've gone, and each time I feel like the park is worse than the time before. And I don't just mean with things closed. Everything just looks more run down. Things aren't open. There's not much staffing. And it makes me wonder if Six Flags would consider just closing it or selling it to another operator. It is one of the original Six Flags parks, but there's been a lot in the news about Six Flags wanting to expand overseas in Dubai and in Asia. If that is the market they want to focus on, maybe they would just decide that they don't need this park anymore. They did that with Kentucky Kingdom where they closed it, and obviously New Orleans, so that was Katrina, had a huge effect on that. They could possibly just decide it's not worth it. I cannot imagine they are making that much money, given the 2 times that I went in short succession during the summer that were completely empty. Now, I didn't go on a Saturday, like I didn't go on July 4th or something, but still, I am amazed by how few people were there on a summer weekend Sunday. Even on a cooler day, you would think they would still draw some locals who would think this is a great thing that it's such a cooler day. And that was definitely not the case here. But overall, I had a fun trip by myself. I had a fun trip going with my daughter. So you can still have a good time at this park, but a lot of it is what you bring into it. If you're going in expecting to be blown away by what they're offering, it's probably not going to be the case. I also wanted to mention that this is episode 50 of the Tomorrow Society podcast, and while it's very different from the typical interview podcast, it still feels great to be able to complete it and have 50 episodes in the can. It took about 3 years to do it. It was actually almost exactly 3 years ago when I completed the first interview podcast I did with Ryan Ritchie, and it's interesting how that came together. I started the Tomorrow Society a few months earlier as a blog, as a place to write my thoughts on theme parks and analyze what's happening in the industry, look back at the history. But I hadn't considered doing a podcast. I had watched Ryan Ritchie's movie After the Fair, which is a great documentary if you haven't seen it, and reached out to him maybe to do an interview over email or such. And he's like, we can talk in person. And I thought, well, let's try and do a podcast. Let's see how it goes. I had a really cool interview with him soon after with Christian Moran about Great Big Beautiful Tomorrow. And it just kind of took off from there. It's been a little sporadic in terms of doing the episodes. I have lucked out with the generosity of some of the guests. Early on, I had people like Sam Genoway, Len Testa, Chad Emerson, who all were willing to do an interview with me when the podcast was just getting started, and that made a huge difference. And even more recently, AJ Wolf of the Disney Food Blog and Bruce Broughton, who composed the music for so many cool Disney attractions. The fact that all of them and so many others took the time to speak with me on this little podcast, I really appreciate it. And the show would not be up to 50 episodes without their input. And I'm really excited to see where we're going in the future. I've started doing this where I'm having an interview podcast every 2 weeks, and then sometimes even bonus podcasts like this one you're listening to right now. And next week, I have Lou Prosperi, the author of several books about Imagineering, on, and that'll be out next Monday. I have several other interviews that will be coming in September, plus a trip report from a trip that I took with my family to Marceline, Missouri. So all of that will be coming in September, and I'm just going to keep moving forward here. I've been connecting with a lot of cool people about doing interviews for the podcast that I know you're going to enjoy, and I can't wait to bring those to you and to get a chance to talk with them. And if you'd like to contact with me, you can always go to tomorrowsociety.com and read the latest blog post, including a post that I had ranking the roller coasters of Six Flags St. Louis if you want to look even further into that park. And you can email me, dan@tomorrowsociety.com. I have a mission for you this week, and that is if you are looking for a way to support the podcast, I have a page for that. You can go to tomorrowsociety.com/support, and I have a new way that you can help out, which is through Undercover Tourist. If you're looking to buy tickets to Disney World, Disneyland, or other parks, you can click on the link on that page and go directly to Undercover Tourist. It does not change what you are paying, but it does help to support the site. And thanks in advance for anyone who does so, because it really makes a difference in continuing to make this show operate. And of course, if you'd also like to connect with me on social media, you can go to Twitter @TomorrowSOC or Facebook or Instagram, which are both @TomorrowSociety. And now I have a Pinterest page, which is also @TomorrowSociety. The Tomorrow Society podcast is hosted, produced, and edited by Dan Heaton. And the music was written by Adam Hookey and performed by the Sophisticated Babies. Thank you so much for listening to this 50th episode of the show, and I will talk to you again next week.